and welcome to the latest episode of Off the Fence. This is your weekly go-to digital jump show brought to you by Ball Sports and At The Races. And of course, we get to look back on all the jump racing action over the last 7 days in England and Ireland, and also a brief look ahead too. We've also got some price boosts for you from Ball Sports and tracker time towards the end of the show, some horses to put in your At The Races tracker. So plenty coming your way in the next 30 minutes or so, and of course we will check in with the boys. But before we do so, we must just say that of course our thoughts are very much with Graham Lee at the moment following the fall he had at Newcastle on Friday. There's obviously been updates from the IJF, and then they haven't been as positive as we would have hoped. We don't know the extent of the injuries at the moment, but all we can say is that our thoughts are very much with Graham and his family at this very tricky time. And Barry, I'm sorry to start the show on a bit of a downer, but of course it only seems right to talk about Graham, and you knew him so you know him so well from days when he was back riding in jump races, and of course it seems horribly ironic that he rode over jumps for all those seasons, and yet this has happened, this what seems like a very serious injury when he's riding flat racing. It just seems so unfair.
Yeah, it's really tough, and a very serious injury. Graham is a brilliant fella. We shared a corner, myself, Ruby, Paul Carberry, Timmy Murphy and Chuck Thornton, and we shared a corner in Cheltenham for years and had great times, and always a brilliant fella to be around, great fun, and he carried that through to the flat. Very popular fella. So, you know, our thoughts and prayers, and we're hoping everything for the best for Graham and his wife Becky and kids. So it's tough, but we're hoping for good news at some stage maybe.
Yeah, and I'm sure the IJF will keep us updated when it's appropriate, and hopefully we will get an update this week maybe. And you know, like Barry says, we can just only hope that it's a little more positive than what we've heard already. There's been plenty of racing to get through this week, Tony, and obviously a lot of focus in at Down Royal. Did you enjoy the weekend sport over there in Ireland?
Oh, I did, of course, yeah. Lots going on over the weekend with the rescheduled Down Royal, Naas, a good meeting there on Sunday. Clonmel, I think, as we mentioned last week, turned out to be quite a good meeting. So a lot going on, and a lot more going to be happening this weekend with having this kind of, I suppose, restructured meeting where they put their two good November cards together. I'm sure there'll be lots to learn over the weekend.
Did you go racing at all this weekend, Tony?
I didn't. A funny story, maybe not that funny at all. Myself and a pal were going to go, but he cried off sick on Friday evening, giving out a bit of two-take, good pal of mine, Declan Brady, and we were kind of patting each other on the back on Saturday morning, saying what geniuses we were not going. The card looked awful, and sure, very thin. The big race was interesting, if not kind of intriguing. But sure, at about 2:27, we were absolutely kicking ourselves after an absolute stormer of renewal of the champion chase. It was absolute drama. So the FOMO that we didn't have maybe at 9 o'clock that morning was certainly kicking in about 2:30. We were pretty sick with ourselves, to be honest.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens, when you make the bad call. And it was an absolute cracker of a day's racing in the end, the champion chase specifically, which we will get to. But let's kick off, Tony, and just rewind a little bit. We're going to try go in sort of chronological order. Well, starting in Ireland anyway, and we'll go back to Thursday at Clonmel. As you said, it turned out to be a good day's racing. Allaho Gesskille winning that mare's listed race. But Mascada, the big disappointment, and a horse that you mentioned on the show last week. So that's the starting point. How disappointed were you with her performance overall behind Allaho Gesskille?
Yeah, initially at the time, kind of had been told beforehand that maybe she wasn't that fit, and I think the market and the ride would have suggested she wasn't that fit. The ground in Clonmel can get very testing at this time of the year. Would have ripped the guts out of any horse that was kind of going there a little bit on the cooked. Henry de Bromhead, I think, mentioned about 3 or 4 weeks ago going to the hilly way, and maybe that's the big target. But yeah, it was a bit disappointing, but she was still kind of travelling there, turning into the straight, having given a very quiet ride out the back, which wasn't the case in her previous start. So disappointed, but I wouldn't just give up on her altogether, although perhaps she is more of a 2-miler on kind of slowish ground than one that's going to stretch out to 2.5. But won't judge her until we've seen her maybe another time with fitness under her belt. Like in this race last season, I think that the mare that probably proved the best of them was the one that was beaten 15 or 16 lengths and towards Scarlet and Dove. She put up a good performance the next day. So it doesn't always say that if you've been run over in this that you can't progress. Like Allaho Devassi has put up what looks a very good performance. I think times wise compares well with Allaho. Form wise it looks good because she had £9 penalty. She has this little penchant for doing things a little bit silly. She wasn't great at the first, made a bit of a mistake at the second. She races very keen. I just don't know, do I fully trust the form? I just wonder how fit some of the others were, although again visually it was very good from her as she started last season also so well. But we'll see kind of where she goes to next. Is she going to be kept to the mare's company? There's kind of an obvious race there for these types of mares on New Year's Day at Fairyhouse, or will she maybe go in against the Geldings at some point?
Okay. Obviously the main race of the day at Clonmel on Thursday was the Clonmel Oil, and it was a bit of a walkover for, well, not really actually, sorry, for Allaho. Obviously it wasn't a walkover, but he made it look like it, just in the ease in which he won the race at very short odds, Barry, after being off the track for a very long time, 500 plus days. Great to see him back, but where should we expect to see him next, do you think? Where do you think this is a starting point for destination-wise throughout the season?
Well, sure, I suppose the John Durkin would come a bit too soon, but maybe the King George, if they decide to go that route, or if they protect him and maybe go an easier target and Thurles shortly after, and on for Cheltenham. But the performance itself, you'd have to be really happy with him. I just love the way he travelled through the race. He jumped, he showed all of his enthusiasm. Would have got a little bit tired late on, which he's entitled to do, especially on that ground, as Tony mentioned. But I just love how he carried Paul through the race and how he went about his job. So it was a good, smart performance and showed lots of spark.
Tony, it's great to see a horse like him back. I feel like he's one of the horses that has that real star appeal, just the way in which he goes about his races, the way in which he looks, how brilliant he's been at times during his career. Do you think we'll see him back to his brilliant best at a sort of Punchestown, or obviously back at Cheltenham?
Yeah, I don't know. He is the kind of horse that run through a wall for you. I think the first Ryanair chase win would suggest that, and the win the Punchestown Gold Cup. He's never a horse to give himself an easy race. So it's not understandable. Maybe he did himself a harm at some point in his kind of career, because he does, I suppose, try so hard for you. I'm just looking at my notes here. I think I wrote 300 or 400 words on that mare's chase and about 10 words on the Clonmel Lloyds. I don't know. I think it's just a totally meaningless race. Jandal was never put into it. Grange Walk isn't up to that class. It's very hard to draw any kind of conclusions from the race based on that, and the next day will tell us more. As Barry said, I'm sure they're going to try and negate any possible bounce factor with him by giving him a bit of a break. Perhaps even Christmas will come too soon and they will wait for Thurles, but no, I'd be very much waiting to see with him the next day, because I just don't think that last Friday told you anything really, bar that he has a degree of well-being. How much ability he retains is just hard to say.
Yeah, and he is the first of our prize boots from Ball Sports on the show. He is boosted. He was 3-1 for the Ryanair, or he is generally, and he's been boosted to 7-2 for you out there. If you wanted to back him to win the Ryanair chase again, it seems as though that'll be his end of season target, or his spring target anyway. Tony, let's stick with you and move on to Down Royal on Friday. Of course, the rearranged meeting, and we spoke about it and the sort of start of the season over in Ireland last week, and mentioned, the Gordon Elliott factor versus Willie Mullins. Where will Gordon's horses be at? And you were just, just musing about a few different angles, and then bang. I'm not sure quite what the number was over the weekend in the end for Gordon Elliott, but it can't have gone much better, could it?
No, I don't think so. Look, I don't know what the number was. The answer was probably a lot. I think was it 5 on the Friday, or 6 on the Friday, and definitely 6 on the Saturday. Look, I don't want to get too carried away with this. Not a lot, or not any of the other trainers were really taking him on. Although some of his better novices did show up very well. Brighter Days Ahead, I think, was impressive in that mare's grade 3. She was one of the least experienced in the field. It looked a proper race in terms of it set up as a real test. Her hurdling wasn't always fluent. They seemed to have kept her out wide, I suppose, to give her a sight at the hurdles, but it didn't seem to matter to her. They could race, and from a long way out, and herself and kind of one that was a proven stayer, Bantown girl, kind of went at it, and she cruised up by her despite kind of, I think she went a bit left at the last, and kind of won very well. Time sort of looked good there as well. I think that kind of that 2 mile trip at Down Royal, it takes a long time for them to cover that 2 miles. It's kind of more like a 17 furlong. I think kind of that race took 4 minutes and 8 seconds. Like the Dawn run would kind of be similar times. Like the last 3 runs were 4:08, 4:03, 4:09. So that kind of stamina sapping 2 miles, I think, is what she wants. I think if she gets into a race maybe over a bare 2 miles, maybe at a speedy track in the interim, wouldn't be the greatest surprise to see her beaten. But I think when the emphasis on stamina, she's one that's definitely, I think, going to go further at some point. She should be, one of the leading players in that division.
Okay, she's getting a big positive tick then in the sort of staying version of the 2 miles. What about Irish Point as well on the Friday before we move on to the Saturday? Do you want to give a quick mention to him? Where do you think he could progress to this season?
Yeah, kind of contrasting race to the Brighter Days Ahead race in that this was quite steadily run, and he would have looked a horse to me that wouldn't have been suited by that beforehand. He was on his head in the race in Leopardstown last February, the one where, oh God, I can't even remember. Elette Thomas won at Facile Vega, disappointed, and Irish Point was also very disappointed. He was kind of beaten at halfway, and then he stepped up to 2.5 for the entry. So he looked like a horse that maybe would stay a bit further, but he actually coped really well with this. Kind of, it was a steadily run race. He was up there, he was in the right position, but he was well on top in the line against a race fit Magical Zoe. I think he was getting £13, which was a hell of a lot. So yeah, good performance out of him. I suppose they would probably nearly have to think about the Morgiana with him now, that he's done it over 2 miles, and then maybe consider going up and trip. They also have Tiupu in the same colours. Rob Curve kind of shown an inclination so far to keep the better horses apart with Gerri Colombe and Gentleman's Game. They were keen to split the two of those, so I presume Tiupu will go to Fairyhouse again for the Hatton's Grace just like last year, and this guy maybe headed for the Morgiana, although he is going to have to step it up again if he's going to have to beat Stateman at Punchestown.
Okay, he remains of interest though at this stage for sure. And now look, the Gordon Elliott sort of Jack Kennedy show rolled on to Saturday at Down Royal and on to the big race, which we can move on to now ourselves, with Gerri Colombe winning that Down Royal Champion Chase, having hit a very big price in running, looking beaten more than once, and then managing to get back up over the top of Envoy Allen and Conflated. Barry, Tony's already referenced what a thriller of a race it was. It was a brilliant watch, and it really kind of got everything going for the jump season, I thought. Tactically, I mean, Gerri Colombe, did it just fall right for him, or was it a tactical masterclass? How did you think it played out watching it?
No, it was hard fought, and he stayed well. We knew after his performance in the March Chase, he does stay well, and he stayed really well to win. He looked beaten top of the hill coming away from 3 out. Envoy Allen quickened up with Conflated, but I suppose the thing that I was wondering when the flag dropped, was Conflated going forward. I know Jigginson would have a preference to ride the horses forward, and I was just surprised that he did that. He has a tendency to jump to his left, and by going to the front, you increase the chance of that tendency. He took a lead in Punchestown. He took a lead in both of his wins in Leopardstown and used his pace from 3 out. I was just surprised that they rode him so aggressively. And then you had your heart in your mouth a few times when he jumped across in front of Gerri Colombe. But I don't think he improved his chances any much by doing that. I think he was ridden for more tactical speed. He might have fared better, but it was a brilliant finish. Rachel had the perfect sit following them round and coming having one go with Envoy Allen, and he ran a cracker. But Gerri Colombe, to his credit, he wore them down and he kept going. So he's going to find tougher days ahead of him, but he's going to find tougher tracks as well, which are going to play to his strengths too. I think obviously Cheltenham, he's been there and he went close. But a proper 3 mile tour around Cheltenham's going to suit him well. And even Leopardstown represented more of a test than Down Ride. You have a downhill run from 3 out in Down Ride, which puts a little bit of emphasis on speed.
And how much from your knowledge of the Gordon Yard? Obviously, they've got, Gold Cup aspirations with this horse. We know that he's second favourite for the race currently. How much will this have been a stepping stone? Obviously, it's a starting point of the season, but will all the screws have been tightened for Saturday, or do you think that there is more improvement still to come from him, given his age, given what he's done so far?
Yeah, no, there was improvement expected from him, but they were really happy with him going into the race because he did show a lot of improvement from his run in Cheltenham to Aintree, and he came back in this season. They felt he was a different horse, much sharper, much quicker and slicker, more switched on, if you like. So they were expecting a big show from him, but they expect improvement as well. But I suppose the question mark is, does he have the pace to match Galloping Deschamps and Braveman's Game? And on Saturday he would need to improve a good bit to match either of those two.
Okay. Tony, you've already said that it's a shame that you missed it on the day, but watching it at home, what were your key takeaways, whether it is about the winner himself or Envoy Allen or conflated? Kind of where was your mind at initially after the race?
I think Barry's covered a lot of it there. I think he enhanced his reputation in terms of toughness, showing the right attitude, gets another win. Although the bare form of it, you would question a little bit. Is conflated a better horse taking a lead? Envoy Allen, we know, is very good at Down Ryle, but I don't think he's a Cheltenham Gold Cup horse. I might come back to his profile in a minute because I have a couple of points. I just want to ask Barry one question about. I think Gordon Elliott has said that he plans to give him one more run before the Cheltenham Gold Cup. I wonder what you thought about that, Barry, because I think to my mind, his best run last season was his last run, his fifth run at the Aintree. He kind of, in form terms and in visual terms. Do you think maybe with a less experienced horse, giving him an extra run before Cheltenham is a good idea, bad idea, or what do you reckon?
I suppose it depends on the individual. As regards last season, and I've ridden the horse in work, he's a very relaxed horse, really laid back, and that's a great thing, but that can lead to a horse being switched off. And for me, from my eye, he looked an awful lot sharper from the drop of the flag in Aintree than he was in Cheltenham. So I think the penny only dropped on him in Cheltenham. That was his first proper competitive race. So I'd say he learned a lot. And like that as well, in Down Ryle, you could see from about halfway he was beginning to cope better with Conflated coming across in front of him. He wasn't as unsure on himself, I felt, watching it. So I'd say he's a horse who knows an awful lot more this season than he did last season. Maybe Gordon feels that he would be better peaked twice more rather than going to the well too often. Only he knows that himself, but he must have good reason for feeling he'd go that route and only go for the two targets rather than bring in a second run beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting aspect of it, because I know Gordon Elliott has had problems with Leopardstown. The chase track there complained a bit about it. I presume that one of those races is going to be his target. What will the ground be like Christmas? What will the ground be like in February? We'll see. One thing I would give Gerri Colombe a lot of praise for is it does tend to be difficult for these, horses coming out of novice company, second season chasers, going into these autumn grade ones, like I suppose the sister race of this in England, the Betfair chase. Matt Toombs, a good lad there with the stats, was telling me I think it's 2 from 18 second season chasers winning that. It does tend to fall to the more experienced. Yeah, more experienced horse just seems to have the edge now. The horse coming out of novice company do then become much more competitive as the season goes on into spring. And at Down Ryle, Delta Work has been beaten at a short price, and this Galvin was beaten at a short price. He was actually in his third season chasing, but he was coming out of novice company. Our Duke was a very good horse who was beaten at a very short price, and it's all relatively recently would have went on to put up big figures and win grade ones afterwards. So yeah, I'd give him credit for that. And obviously the 3 horses that he beat, all had fitness on their side. The other thing, disappointing kind of post-race thing is both Gordon Elliott and Henry de Brom had on about the cross-country for conflated Manel Indo. Lads, come on, will yous? The cross-country is an oddity. It's an interesting oddity, but that's all it is. It's not a Gold Cup.
How has it become this niche thing? How has that happened? I don't know. Why it's become fashionable to want to run in the cross country. It's the bin. It's the last chance saloon. It's not the now time for these horses. I don't know what it goes as far as say it's the bin now. I suppose Tiger Roll helped. I suppose maybe glamorise it a bit. And the fact that it's not a handicap anymore, gives it a bit of kudos as well. But Galvin and kind of Delta Work and these going for it recently. Look, I know Cheltenham win is precious, but Conflated was, not that far removed from winning a Savage chase impressively last year. Ran very well in the Gold Cup. Manel Indo has won 2 graded races in the last year. Conflated pitches up to Leopardstown at Christmas. He's a single figure price again. It wouldn't sit well with me, and maybe they need to look at the conditions of that. They're making it back to a handicap, or banning horses rated 150, or banning horses that have won a grade 1 in the last 18 months or something like that. No, it's just taken away from
the Gold Cup and adding nothing to that race really.
Yeah, you're not the only bright mind in horse racing who has suggested that something needs to be done. And look, I'm obviously slightly over the top with the bin comment, but you get what I mean. It just Tony said it. It just feels like it's taking away from other races, which isn't really the point of it. And I understand that owners and trainers are desperate to get in the winners' enclosure at Cheltenham, but it feels like, I don't know, it's a cheap out. We can move on, Tony. We'll move on because that race was obviously a small field, but a great race at Down Royal. Another small field which was disappointing was the Grade 2 2.5 mile race just after. Just the two runners in there, Ash Tree Meadow winning it. We get a few of those over here in England, but you don't want to start seeing plenty of those smaller field races over in Ireland.
No, that race is staying on the card, to be honest. No one wants to see that awful stuff, two-runner race. No offence to the two horses involved, they're decent, but just two-runner race is not appealing to anyone. Another race they need to have a look at, I don't know whether the racetrack need to make a few phone calls. The actual entries at the initial stage, I think there were 9 or 10, Willie Mullins and a few interesting horses. Need to make a few phone calls. He doesn't seem to want anything to do with them Ryan for some reason. I don't know if it's the price of diesel up our neck of the woods. We can get him a bit of cheap. We can definitely get him a bit of cheap stuff. He wants to come up this far, so maybe it's not that at all. But they need to do something about it. I have one suggestion. A few years in the COVID year 2020, Punchestown was off, and there's a novice handicap chase at the Punchestown Festival that tends to be very well contested, very valuable. I think Allaho sponsor it at the minute. They're on that race in November at Punchestown, around the Morgiana Hurdle meeting. It turned out to be an absolutely brilliant race, kind of a second season handicap chase. Can't just recall what won it. Daily Tiger, I think maybe Noel Meads won. He went on to be kind of graded class after that. The King George winner was second, Tornado Flyer. The Paddy Power winner, Castlebawn West, was third. Good horses down the field, and Vegan won a Danmure after it. Maybe they need to just reinvent it, put a bit more prize money into it, make it a handicap. You might draw a few more of them out, because that race is just not working at the minute. And for as part of a Grade 1 card, it can be made so much better if they maybe use a bit of imagination.
Okay, Barry, let's just another few horses to mention from Ireland, just two actually. Quick mention to Down Memory Lane, the JP McManus maiden hurdle winner with Derek O'Connor in the saddle. He caught your eye and may have been missed by a few people amongst all the other action on Saturday.
Well, yeah, probably wasn't the most competitive race in the world, but he went through the motions, a little bit novice early on, jumped well through the race, had a little look at the last as well, only did as much as he had to do. But I was in fair yesterday, he won his bumper and he was very impressive. He was very impressive in his point-to-point beforehand, so I'd say he's definitely a horse for the future. He'll have a good time over hurdles, but chasing, I believe, is his main target. But there's plenty of fun to be had with him before he goes jumping the fence. How
come Derek continues to keep the ride on him?
Well, there was 2 meetings and Mark Walsh was in Goran, so that would have played a part in it. But Derek won a point-to-point on him, he won a bumper on him, and obviously won a maiden hurdle. Maybe he's going to stay with him, so time will tell.
Nice. And last mention from Ireland then, Tony, well, for the time being anyway, to you. I was pleased that when you threw this into the running order, I was thinking, who is Carl Miller? And then I was relieved when you told me pre-recording that he's not a known jockey, too much known anyway over in Ireland, but he did ride Magic Tricks to victory at Down Royal, and you wanted to give him a bit of kudos for the ride.
Yeah, I think it's his 5th ever winner. He seems to have worked with Gordon Elliott for 4 or 5 years. Listened to him interviewed afterwards. It seems coming from a very ordinary, non-horsey background, shall we say, in Dublin City. I thought he gave this a very good ride. Kind of hemming in some of the other ones, kind of on the run from 3 to 2 out. Now, I don't know if to give him too much praise, because I think he picked up a 4-day ban for careless riding afterwards. But I did enjoy the fact that Barry and Ruby were both cutting each other on television about this, accusing each other of having done the same type of thing whenever they got the chance when they were riding. So maybe they were both impressed with his riding. Anyway, he got the job done, and a massive winner for him vis-a-vis where he would have been riding winners beforehand.
All right, Barry, let's roll on to talk about a bit of the UK action. We're going to rattle through a few performances, and we will start with the Martin Pipe winner going over fences in Iroko. Caught a lot of people's eyes on chasing debut at Warwick. That was back on Wednesday. What was so impressive about him? Why did you know, we've seen lots of nice novice chase performances, but why him?
Yeah, so he warmed to the task after a couple of fences and got very, very quick, very slick, really measured. I thought he showed a great attitude. He was really up for jumping fences, but really measured. Won Cosley, beat a nice horse of Paul Nicholls' Golden Sun, who was having his first run. He was a Grade 2 winner in Otai, but had missed a bit of time off. But Iroko, he worked hard to win the Martin Pipe, but he won this race like a horse who had a bit more pace, and you might just find he could be a sharper horse over a fence. I just loved how he attacked and jumped, and he was so accurate with his jumping.
Okay, giving him a very positive shout then, and he is our next Ball Sports price boost as well. That's for the Turners Novices Chase. He's a general 12-1 shot. He was 12-1 with Ball Sports, and he's been boosted to 14-1 with them. Stay tuned for a little bit later in the show, and I will tell you how and where you can avail of these price boosts with Ball Sports. Barry, let's stick with you. Quick mention to Gesskille, won the Sefton, finally got his win over the national fences, but might be one for the actual national in time if he keeps this progress up.
Yeah, exactly. He was 138, I think, going into this race. Would need to get up to nearly the mid 140s, 143, 145 to get into the Grand National. You're down to 34 runners as well, which is going to make it harder. But definitely had blinkers on for the first time over these fences, and I'd say would have needed them at this trip. Obviously, love conditions as well, proper stare. But I think the National will be ideal for him if he can just creep into it. He'd definitely be one with a chance. Has plenty of course experience, and as a 7-year-old is just coming to the right sort of age.
Now, Aintree was affected by low sun, and Ireland was also affected by low sun at Naas, which raised a few eyebrows, I believe, because of the sort of direction of the sun there at Naas when they omitted some obstacles. What's your view on this, Barry? It's not long since you were riding in the saddle. It feels like this, taking fences out because of the low sun is more prolific now than it ever was before. Are you for or against it in this situation?
Well, if you turn the corner into the straight and you have the sun blazing into your eyes and you can't see what's in front of you, I think, Vanessa, you'd be of the same view that I think we might have to bypass this one. In Down Royal, you have a dog leg, if you like, but you have the third last fence at the top of the hill and then a slight turn to the last two. So the sun is at a different direction, but you can get a glare coming off the stands. When it's head on at the third last, it can be shining across with a glare off the stands, rails, everything. All these things cause it, but it's like as if you're driving a car and you turn a corner, next thing the sun is blazing in your face, pull down the visor and you're fine, but you don't have that option either on a horse's back or the horse himself. So when you can barely see a hurdle or a fence, it can just make life difficult, I suppose. But no, there's a time they have to be out, and they have to be out, especially this time of year. During the winter months, the sun is at its lowest, and it is a real issue, but there are lots of courses that are trying to address it. Fairies, for example, 3 fences across the back straight, they're often all taken out with low-lying sun. They've brought one of those fences to the side, so you have only 2 fences in the back straight now. So if they're going to be bypassed, they'll bypass 2 rather than 3. So there's a few things being looked at, timings of races and whatnot, but there isn't very much you can do. If there's no cloud in the sky and the sun is blazing, you're in trouble this time of year.
Yeah. We were going to mention West Balboa, but we're going to run out of time, so we'll just give a nod to her on her seasonal reappearance. She sort of looks like, well, I mean, she was pretty impressive at Aintree, and, Mare's Hurdle campaign is on her agenda. But Barry will move on to Nappers Hill, who took a pretty big step forward, I thought, from his first chase run to his second chase run to take the Rising Stars at Wincanton. The yard and the team seem to predict that. Are we underestimating him? Can he be a player at the very top table, do you think?
I think he can. It just depends what else gets to the top table, I suppose. Has the option, I would imagine, between 2 and 2.5 mile. Jumps really well, plenty of pace. Ran into an unexpected party first time who had the benefit of a good bit of experience from last season over fences. And I'd say Napper Hill probably just needed that run. But was impressive at Wincanton on Saturday, and as I say, is versatile.
And what about Roubaud, who won the elite hurdle? Again, am I clutching at straws thinking that he could be a place player in a champion hurdle. He's on the improve. He's pretty straightforward. Goes from the front like he did on Saturday. I mean, we haven't. I don't feel like he's reached his peak just yet. It's just about how many steps forward he can take.
Well, that's the question. But it was a good performance, and he is a horse on the up. I love how he jumps. He's rapid, he's measured, he's really quick. It was a good performance. And as I say, he's a horse on the up. Paul has he's pointed out throughout the Christmas hurdle and maybe the elite hurdle, and I suppose he's leaving his options open for there. He's saying he's a chaser more so for the future, so he's not committing him to the champion hurdle just yet. But I'd say if he keeps improving, he might find himself in March on the Tuesday if Cheltenham.
I hope so. Something in behind Constitution Hill. It's just Irish horses right up to about 50-1. So something in there for us for the places would be great. Tony, let's talk about just a very brief mention for Naas on Sunday. Saw Dino Blue back in action and in winning action. So Gerhard falling in behind, a bit disappointing. But Dino Blue, where could she progress to this season? She's actually another price boost for what it's worth in the Mare's Chase. She was 9-2. And she's been boosted out to 11-2 with Ball Sports, but she's a general 9-2 chance for that Mare's Chase, and it's going to be competitive. That.
Yeah, I'd still be a little bit questionable at the trip. I think she looked quite fast again on Sunday. Showed a lot of early pace. Actually did well to hold on against one that had been ridden with more restraint field door coming at her late. I thought Sir Gerhard actually ran very well. I thought he jumped probably as well as he has over fences until he made that mistake at the second last. He's actually, like, if you take out his runs at Punchestown, it's very hard to find him running a bad race. He ran well for a long way in last year's Brown Advisory. He ran well in the Grade 1 of Fairy House over 2.5, and he ran well here. But the jumping is obviously going to be the worry. And I suppose the point it is back to the drawing board a little bit when he's coming off a fall like that. Having not maybe jumped all that well at Punchestown either.
All right, well, before we look ahead, do a brief look ahead to the Paddy Power meeting at Cheltenham this weekend coming. A bit of a recap of those price boosts for you with Ball Sports. So you've got Allaho for the Ryanair Chase boosted to 7-2. Iroko for the Turner's Novices Chase boosted to 14-1. And Dino Blue boosted for the Mare's Chase. She was 9-2 and she's now 11-2. And if you are interested in them, then please read the show's description and the comments below down here. You'll see the T's and C's and how to get involved with those Ball Sports price boosts. Please do it responsibly, of course. Tony, let's move on and just give a little look ahead to the weekend's action. Obviously, we don't entirely know what's going to run and we've only got entries for the first couple of days out at this stage. But as always, Cheltenham looks as though it's going to be fiercely competitive. Has anything caught your eye in either the Paddy Power Chase or the Greatwood or anything else elsewhere?
Just a couple of horses there. I'd have a mild interest in Brampton Bell, trained behind the Bromhead, is entered in an amateur riders handicap chase. I think it's the second race on Saturday. I thought she ran well at Galway on her return over 2-6, looking like she wanted a bit further. I was kind of ridden out the back and finished off her race well. I think stepping up 3 furlongs to triple suitor. She does seem to be quite ground dependent, so would probably need the rain. So we kind of just waiting to see what the forecast does there. And the other horse I'm interested in is kind of the reverse of that. I'd say he'd want a bit of nice ground. Gin Coco would interest me in the Greatwood. Ran really well in it last year. She kind of ran into one that liked to move, doing down and proved himself well up the graded class afterwards. And had a problem, I think, very valid excuse for how it ran in the county, where the ground would have been a bit on the slow side too. So has a good record of going well fresh, is a bit fragile, so probably will be tuned up for this if it gets ground, which should be thereabouts, I think.
All right, a couple of mentions there to keep an eye on. Barry, if we see the Real Whacker and Stage Star in the Paddy Power Chase, I don't know how likely that'll be to see the both of them, but that would be a hell of a treat for us, wouldn't it?
It would. There were 2 brilliant performers from the festival. I was really impressed with Stage Star, and I liked the strength of the Turner's form. Not long till May was second and ran a good race at the October meeting in Cheltenham as well. So obviously it appreciated Mighty Potter in behind him. It was a strong race. So I would be in the Stage Star camp, and I'd like a little bit of a not long till May. I just wondered about the horse on the Ryanair, the Mighty Whacker. I just wonder about the strength of his form in the Dipper where he beat Monmoral over 2.5. So I'm just not fully convinced on that, but I do like Stage Star and Not Long Till May.
All right, positive shouts then. And on Sunday, the Greatwood Hurdle and the reappearance of John Bon as well, hopefully, in the Schlur Chase. That looks like it's going to be a very small field, but it could be more competitive than the betting suggests if Nube Negra and the Alan King horse showed up.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, John Bon is the worthy favourite and is the one you'd want to be on. But I just thought Edward Stone and Nube Negra does run well in this race every year, but especially Edward Stone. I just thought maybe the prices were maybe not a true reflection of his chance. But as I said, John Bon would be the one to be on, but Edward Stone might be closer than the price suggests.
And Barry, let's give a quick mention to the Greatwood Hurdle, of course, on Sunday at Cheltenham as well. Did anything jump out at this early stage for you in this race?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Lucia was left in, having run in Wetherby only 2 weeks before this. I would expect a good bit of improvement, so I think she'll be interesting. She should settle well off a fast pace. And the other one I liked was Any Harm in Asking, John O'Neill's runner. He put up a sequence of 3 or 4 wins last season, a little bit disappointing then in the spring, but was second in Foss Lass on its first run back for a good while, and I thought could run well at a nice price.
Okay, we will look to that with interest. We will, of course, be reviewing all of that this time next week. We'll have plenty to get through, as we have done on this show. So we are very nearly at the end, which just leaves tracker time, horses to add to your tracker that the boys have spotted over the last 7 days. Tony, I will come to you first. Just your tracker horse and just one line, please.
One line's going to be hard here. Slade Steel. Henry Gromhead won 2 maiden hurdles at Naas on Sunday. I suppose the natural reaction was that really they were only boosting the form of the 2 Willie Mullins bumper horses who they were behind last season. I was still very impressed with Slade Steel though, in winning over 2 miles. I thought the trip looked very sharp for him. Thought he hurdled well in the main. Time, no matter what way you cook it out, compared to the Fisher Lane or some of the later races over 2.5 miles, looks very good. Showed a good attitude late in the piece. I thought the way Jack Kennedy rode the front runner King of Kings field, and it kind of suggests to me that he thought there was going to be fitness doubts with a few in behind. Slade Steel probably one of those. He was quite dead in the market. No, his SP wouldn't really reflect that, but he was kind of double that on the exchanges most of the day and late. So I'd say for fitness there's going to be a bit of improvement in him. That was over 2 miles. I do think he's probably looks more like a 2.5 miler to me, and maybe he's not going to be up to the level of Ballybourne, who did beat him well in Punchestown last April, but he should be a graded novice hurdler judge on this performance.
Okay, into the tracker he goes then. And Barry, your tracker horse, please.
Yeah, a horse called Personal Ambition. He won in Warwick on Tuesday. First time on the race course. He was third in a point last season here in Ireland. Ran very green. He was jumping, was hit and miss, but he managed to turn over an odds-on shot of Nicky Henderson's Jinko Blue. He turned that over anyway and won really well. So I think he's a horse to keep an eye on, and I would expect plenty of improvement in him in his jumping and his racing.
Okay, Personal Ambition then for Barry. I'm very aware, viewers and listeners out there, that last week I gave a good push for wanting more audience interaction or listener and viewer interaction and asked for your questions and all sorts of things. We're not just ignoring that, but we had loads to get through today and we needed to try and keep the show relatively tight. When we have a bit more time, we will answer a few of your questions, so do keep them coming in the YouTube comments box below. Do get involved with the Ball Sports price boost. The ones we've already spoken about. Again, details are them below too. But for now, we can wrap up this week's show. We will, of course, be back next Tuesday reviewing all that action from Cheltenham. But for now, thank you very much for watching and listening. That was Off the Fence.